Hey, BassGeek here. We're going to talk about spinnerbaits for the spring. Let's talk about spinnerbaits, guys. I can deep dive into spinnerbaits like a million times over. We can talk about heads. This is actually a grass head. It's very pointed. It's going to come through grass a lot easier. This is more of a wood head. Okay, see how it's a little more flat on the bottom as compared to the grass head. Now this will come across wood too. You just got to be a little careful. I like one that comes across. So these are the two type heads that I look for. There's a lot of good brands out there. I love the Nichols Pulsator. Another brand you should look into is the Mini Me by Spot Sticker. Man, it's such a compact little spinnerbait. Man, I've caught a ton off these, especially with white blades. When it comes to spinnerbaits, I really do like to keep things simple. You'll see me throw a lot of times these. These are generally multi-blades. I'll throw them a lot of times in the fall. Most of the time during the spring, which is what we're talking about now, I really throw a Tandem Willow more than anything. You can get out there, and there are times when you want to throw that big single willow leaf. And right around when you get those, I'm going to say mid-spring, when the water temperature warms up to say upper 50s, lower 60s, that one willow leaf can be huge. But most of the time, I'm going Tandem willow leaves. Right when that water is dirty, pretty much throughout the spring, if you can get dirty water, that one little tandem blade, it can either be silver, but that little kicker blade, that little Colorado blade that's orange or red is great, especially when the water temps are still 55, 63, or you get that sudden rain or flood and it muddies it up. Really, for me, the only time I use Colorados is when it really dirties up and the water raises above its normal level and it's in bushes and trees. That Colorado can be real nice in that super shallow water, slow rolling it and keeping it up shallow. One of the things that I pay extreme attention to, and that's my blades. The blade colors are really going to be what brings in the bass. Just to kind of give you an idea, I actually carry a box of blades and skirt material just for my jigs and, you know, chatterbaits and that sort of stuff, just to be able to change things on the fly. It's super easy. You can make them real quick. But one of the things that I really pay a lot of attention to is blade color. And last spring, that was a huge deal. Early in the spring, when, you know, the fish were really starting to pull up into those shallow pockets, around that shallow cover, those trees, and it would be, you know, we were getting some heavy rains. Changing out those blades to a spinnerbait that had white blades on them were a huge key of getting bass to commit to biting. When it's overcast, a standard silver blade is going to reflect a gray flat sky. You're not going to get as much reflection out of this on a day like today. You're going to get plenty. High bluebird, you know, it's a great time to throw that silver blade. When it's early in the morning, when it's just a heavy overcast, maybe a lot of rain, you're not going to get a whole lot of flash even out of a gold blade, which tends to be what I'll go to on a cloudy day. If I'm on a cloudy day, you know, a good flat gray sky, maybe it's dead slick calm, maybe it's not, that gold blade is what I'm going to go to. Now, I will say there are times when I'll go to that gold blade when the bluegill are on the bed too. We can dive deeper into that later on. Like I said, the white blade is my go-to when it is just heavy cloud cover, dirty water. We know they're up there shallow, maybe a little bit of chop, maybe a little bit of rain. This color right here, especially too, like in the dual willow leaves, when they're up there and they should be feeding, getting ready to go on the bed, and it is just ugly, rainy, bad conditions, you can't beat a white. Now, around that same time, if you're fishing for smallmouth, you can't beat a chartreuse. Same type of conditions, but you know you're targeting smallmouth, throw one of these on. and trust me, you're gonna have a fun day. Now, let's talk about skirt colors. Guys, skirt colors I keep super simple. Kind of like this, a translucent shad sort of color. It might have a little bit of, you know, blue in there. It might have a little bit of chartreuse in there. Very rarely do I ever throw like a solid chartreuse skirt. I want it to be a combo, even if I'm throwing the blades. Generally, white or some sort of shad color 100% of the time is what I'm throwing. Now, I will say again, when those bluegills are up on the bed, a good bluegill color, you know, and I'll tone it way down, especially in super clear water. Man, it works so good. You throw it with those gold blades, and it can be an early morning machine. So throw a little bit, you know, a little bit of that green pumpkin in there, just a hint of orange, a hint of chartreuse. Keep those accent colors to a minimum, and I'm telling you, those double willow leaf, you wouldn't believe what you'll end up catching on that around the time that the bluegill are up spawning. So now let's talk about weight. Now guys, one of the reasons why I like the mini-me's is because they put the weight down the shank of the hook, and so I throw a lot. Hardly ever am I throwing anything less than a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait. Unless I'm down on the Tennessee River toward Knoxville, I'll start throwing a half. Rarely am I ever throwing less than a 1/2 ounce. Now, you guys might have some really flat areas that you want to be able to burn a 1/4 ounce through, and that's good. And that's the types of places, if I'm out really, I mean, where I really need to keep it in less than a foot of water or a foot of water, that 1/4 ounce is where I'm going to go. 90% of the time, I'm throwing a 3/4 and even an ounce so that I can really contour those deep, steep drops. Pick the weight correct for your conditions. So if you're fishing a lot of flatter water, a lot of shallower water, you might want to look at those 1/4 ounce. Try to match the hatch too. Make sure those blades are around the same size of the bait. And you can put smaller blades on that'll help a 1/2 ounce or a 3/4 ounce fish a little deeper. Or you can put bigger blades on and allow it to come up. Trailers. I toy with trailers here and there, but to be honest with you, 90% of the time I don't throw trailers. 90% of the time, unless I'm getting a lot of short strikes, I don't throw trailer hooks because I'm throwing around a lot of wood. For me, there's one time when I like to throw a trailer, and a lot of times what's worked best for me is just a white grub, and that's around the shad spawn. The shad spawn, if you can get in those areas and fish just a little bit deeper off the edge of the majority of the shad that's up there, that can be a killer bait that time of year with just a little bit of that tail. It just does something to the bass. All the motion you can get to stand out for all that shad can a lot of times help you catch more fish. As far as that goes, if I'm missing some fish, I will add a trailer hook on. But other than that, I keep it real simple. The biggest thing I go with when it comes to spinnerbait fishing is I pay very close attention to the type of blade and the color of blade. And it has paid off for me for years. This is one of the baits I've probably been fishing for most of my fishing life, which is years. We're just gonna leave it right there. So now when it comes to a spinnerbait, I do want to go show you kind of a little trick I do with my retrieves. So the trick I like to do with my spinnerbait is, if you've ever seen bait fish that are up shallow, so in the spring when they're up there shallow, you ever just toss something in there and notice how they'll run about 2-3 foot out, and then they'll kind of turn around and look. They'll turn around and see, okay, what is it? So that's kind of how I do my spinnerbait. So I'll give it 2 or 3 quick, and then I'll just let it die and contour, and then I'll start reeling it a little bit slow. And I keep my finger right here, because every once in a while I'll stop and just give that rod tip a little pop. And while I'm reeling, I may just give it a little pop, little twitch to make those blades do something a little different. So again, just a quick, easy, I try to mimic a bait fish as much as I can. So I hit up there, I give it a couple of quick turns, and then I stop it for a second, and I just slow roll and just give a couple of quick twitches. And that's the trick to fishing a spinnerbait. All right, guys, there's some tips on how to catch more bass on a spinnerbait. Make sure you're paying close attention to blade selection. In my opinion, one of the most important parts of a spinnerbait. All right, you guys know the drill. Like it if you like it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, ring that bell so you get the notifications when these videos come out. And as always, you guys rock.